Thank you, everybody, for being here. It was an honor to be with you yesterday morning. Thank you for coming our way this morning, but we appreciate your taking the time to come to Washington, D.C. But Commander and all the members of the American Legion, members of the Auxiliary, it's my privilege to welcome you into the House of Representatives today for this joint hearing. And it is my honor to be with you again today, as I was yesterday morning. It has been said over and over again, each of you has given selflessly to your country while you were in uniform, and you continue to do so today, and for that we're ever grateful. I want to extend a special welcome to your National Commander, Michael Helm, and the National President of the Auxiliary, Janet Jefford. It's a pleasure to get a chance to speak with both of you. Commander, you're recognized for your statement.
I want to first of all introduce my wife and best friend, Debbie. In the interest of time, I will wait until the conclusion of my remarks this morning to introduce the rest of my team, as well as some other important guests. Chairman Miller, Chairman Isaacson, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the committee. On behalf of the 2.3 million wartime veterans who make the American Legion our nation's largest veteran service organization, I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. The challenges ahead of us are enormous and urgent. These challenges are also filled with historic opportunities to make positive changes for America's veterans, military personnel, and their families. As National Commander of the American Legion, I have the great privilege of traveling our nation state by state, city to town, personally meeting with veterans and their families. I have listened to their frustrations. I have promised solutions. With more than 13,500 local posts stitched across the fabric of our country and beyond, the American Legion is uniquely positioned to do the best kind of market research, in person, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, one veteran at a time. As I testify before you today, American Legion service officers are working one-on-one with nearly 750,000 veterans across the country, helping them with their VA benefits, health care access, education, employment, and other needs. The American Legion is also now in the midst of a nationwide Veterans Benefits Center tour where we have already personally assisted thousands of frustrated veterans and their families. The American Legion's legislative priorities are built on countless such personal interactions with veterans, military personnel, VA staff, health care providers, elected officials, business leaders, educators, and patriotic Americans everywhere. Today, as you might suspect, the prevailing concern expressed among them all is transition assistance. With more than 1.5 million military men and women expected to discharge from the service in the coming years, a wave of new veterans is entering the civilian ranks. They join millions more from previous eras. They look to us to uphold the promises we as a nation made to them when they pledged their lives to protect our freedoms and to keep us safe from harm. I have visited hundreds of American Legion posts this year, and when I speak of the four pillars of service our organization upholds, veterans, defense, Americanism, and youth, one particular topic always gets collective nod of understanding. That topic is effective treatment for the signature wounds of the global war on terrorism, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury. The American Legion has been personally helping veterans suffering from head injuries and mental health conditions since the doughboys came home from the Great War with what was then called shell shock. But it took 60 years and unbridled persistence from the American Legion for PTSD to become recognized as a service-connected diagnosis by the VA. The Vietnam generation shed light on the struggles that families endure when their lives are upended by combat PTSD. For the last 30-plus years, however, too often VA's treatment plan for veterans coping with PTSD has been pharmaceutical. The American Legion's Task Force on PTSD and TBI has worked with top medical experts the VA, veterans, and their families to offer a more effective strategy, one which recognizes that no two cases of PTSD, TBI are the same, so no magic pill is going to solve the problem. The entire family must be involved in treatment programs, especially the caregivers. And non-pharmaceutical alternative treatments really do work for individual veterans, and they must be recognized as such by the VA. Just as everyone's stress experience is unique, including those who suffer with the distinct effects of military sexual trauma, so too must be our compassionate response. For tens of thousands of veterans, VA's current prescription is not working. A 2014 American Legion survey of more than 3,000 veterans with PTSD or TBI showed that 59% of the respondents felt no improvement as a result of their treatment plans. 30% said they terminated their plans because they were ineffective. This breakdown contributes mightily to the high rate of veteran suicide, substance abuse, and homelessness that our nation and the American Legion simply cannot abide. We implore you to study alternative therapies. Many have proven much more effective than pills alone. Introduce and pass legislation that will require the VA to recognize treatments other than those that are measured in milligrams and doses per day. This is just one among many opportunities we share to improve the lives of veterans and their families at this time of enormous urgency and transition. Another opportunity, civilian careers. For those who are getting RIF, military careers unexpectedly cut short due to the budget-driven force reductions, and for those simply separating after honorable tours, it is not some act of charity to ease the path to civilian employment. Veterans need careers as much as our economy needs veterans. More than 200 representatives of specialized industries from across the country will soon gather in Washington for an American Legion Summit to find ways for well-trained veterans to convert their military experience into credits toward licenses, credentials, and certifications in such fields as emergency medical response, nursing, transportation, and skilled trades. The Vow to Hire Heroes Act was a great step in this effort, and we thank Congress for passing it. The American Legion is now taking this initiative to the states, to industry, and to the Department of Defense, where credits can begin accumulating while personnel are still in the military. We must all work together to find the right formula to convert military experience into training credits. Throughout the country, the American Legion sponsors and supports hundreds of veterans' job and career events each year. We work with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Department of Labor, big businesses and small ones to connect employers with veterans ready and willing to work. We strongly encourage the continuation of tax credits for those employers, with expansion to companies that hire veterans of the National Guard and Reserves, so many of whom left their careers and families to serve in combat. We all know how the original GI Bill, the Serviceman's Readjustment Act of 1944, changed America. Today's veterans are poised to have the same kind of impact. One successful provision of the original GI Bill is often overlooked: low-interest business and farm loans that help 20th century veterans across the land become engines of their local economies. Today, we ask Congress to expand the post-9/11 GI Bill so that unused funds can be applied to help veteran-owned businesses get off the ground. On the American Legion website just this month, we told the story of Marine Corps veteran Travis Barnes of Indianapolis. He was in his first semester of college when terrorists struck the World Trade Center on 9/11. Upon seeing that, like so many veterans of his generation, he suspended his life plan, stepped away from campus, and stepped up to serve his country. He came home from Iraq a changed man in 2006. Multiple combat missions, traumatic brain injuries. For 2 years after he came home, Travis relied heavily on his family for support. He eventually finished college and entered law school, but realized his true calling was business. He opened a micro distillery in Indianapolis and began a new life as a vetrepreneur. In doing so, he joined a growing fold of veteran business owners who are making a difference in our economy every day. Precision, cleanliness, and attention to detail are among the standards Barnes learned in the Marine Corps that are working at his business. Less than a year old, it's already successful and growing. He plans to hire 21 new employees. He says, and I quote, "It's our personal mission to hire as many vets as we can." For veterans like Barnes, and there are thousands, GI Bill benefits are better spent capitalizing business opportunities that create jobs in our communities. And to him, the opportunity to convert military experience into business success was the best medicine for his TBI. But no two cases are alike. That's what makes our shared mission so complicated. We have certainly learned that this year as the American Legion has personally interacted with thousands of veterans who did not receive effective transition assistance. They have come to us frustrated and in need at our Veterans Crisis Command Centers and Benefits Centers, which we have conducted across the country in the aftermath of VA's meltdown of trust last April. We all know what happened. Falsified appointment records revealed by whistleblowers, performance bonuses paid on the basis of those records, veterans dying waiting for unscheduled appointments. Change was needed at the highest levels of VA, and change was effected. Thus began the journey we're all on now. Over the last 8 months, the American Legion has conducted no fewer than 14 different command centers and town hall meetings in some of the hardest hit VA communities. The American Legion was able to respond immediately. We deployed a team of specialists in health care, benefits, and counseling to VA locations in great need of assistance. Within the first 30 days after the scandal broke, the American Legion had established its first Veterans Crisis Command Center. Within 120 days, the American Legion conducted outreaches at 12 centers and served more than 3,000 veterans. We also helped veterans and their families recoup well over $1 million in benefits that they were due, that should have been received much sooner. Through these interactions, we have discovered that transition assistance is needed for veterans of all ages, whether you're a 30-year-old officer looking for a new job after getting riffed, or a Vietnam War veteran wondering why your VA claim for Agent Orange exposure is mired in the backlog. We have met with the surviving spouses of veterans of all ages unsure of their VA benefits. A full report of these events, which will continue through 2015, has been distributed to you titled Crisis to Confidence. It illustrates the many challenges and opportunities for all of us, the American Legion, the VA, and our elected officials, to get this right. One key observation from the centers was the backlog of delayed VA claims, and that remains a major frustration. The VA reports that it is making headway against the overall backlog of claims 125 days old or older. But the American Legion is equally concerned about the growing number of appeals and remands. That this suggests that quantity is trumping quality in many cases, and we all know where that kind of thinking led the VA last year. At the centers, we also are working alongside the VA staff to improve access to care for veterans who still wait too long for medical appointments. The American Legion applauded emergency legislation to allow the VA patients to use non-VA providers if they were waiting a month or longer to see doctors or if they live far from VA facilities. But let me be clear, the American Legion supports choice cards only as a temporary fix to the bigger problem of VA access. We oppose privatization or the vouchering out of VA care as a long-term solution. Veterans need the VA. It is up to us to repair the access problem and restore trust, not send veterans down the road for help somewhere else. The timing for change is upon us as new VA leadership looks to shift a culture that was decades in the making. The need is urgent with so many veterans entering the system right now, and the need is not going away anytime soon, as our nation once again is deploying troops into a theater of war to fight Islamic State terrorists. Sadly, some will come home from the fight having made the ultimate sacrifice. They will arrive at Dover Air Force Base in coffins draped by our nation's enduring symbol of freedom. I will ask once more for Congress to support the supermajority of Americans in co-sponsoring and passing a bill introduced in the House last month that would amend the United States Constitution to protect our flag from desecration. If ever there were a time for our elected officials, the VA, DOD, the American Legion, and Veterans of America to unify under the colors of our nation, it is now. It is not enough to identify problems and tweet out blame in 140 characters or less. We must all work together to achieve substantive solutions to the frustration veterans everywhere are expressing. Above all that, let us unite in our prayers for U.S. servicemen and women who today are in harm's way. Let's be sure we are providing them the resources they need to succeed in the war theater. We cannot let sequestration harm them or our national security.